This is one of my very favorite wild plants. And I saw several listings online lately asking what this plant was. So let me share just a little bit with you on the bitter melon, the bitter gourd, balsam apple, balsam pear, stink vine. This is Momordica charantia. Hey, I'm Elise. I'm glad you stopped by. And this is Concerning Gardens and More. One of my very favorite wild plants. Now, there is a cultivated version of bitter melon that you can buy in food places. It's going to be longer, kind of like a gourd or even like a rugged-looking zucchini. And speaking of zucchini, this plant is in the cucurbit family, that same family that gives us zucchinis, melons, pumpkins, gourds, and other plants. And that's neat. And I love these orange melons or gourds, and they're called all kinds of things depending upon what you were brought up to call them and what area of the country you're in. We always called it stink vine. And why? Because it does stink. When you crush these leaves, it's going to smell like old feet, old dirty socks, old gym lockers. Now, just standing here by it, handling it, it doesn't stink. It has a very light green odor. But if you start crushing it, it releases those volatile oils, and it's called the stink vine. So we've got this really lightweight vine with tendrils. It loves to grow on fences, trellises, up trees. I've seen it grow up 15, 20 feet on trees. In our area, Zone 9B or 10A, it dies back in the winter time, and then will come back again in late spring. Wonderful food source for the wildlife. Bees love it, pollinators love it, the birds love it. Young mammals, young reptiles, they will eat different portions of the plant, including portions of the gourd. Really pretty. Now, there are some other vines in here also, if you see leaves that look a little different. So I've let this patch grow on purpose. It's actually coming over the fence from the neighbor's yard. I'll be cleaning it up some just to keep it manageable. So we get this beautiful 5-petaled flower. After the flower, it starts setting the little green gourds. And here's some. Then the gourds will start changing color. They'll turn yellow. Then they will eventually turn this bright orange, and they'll be full of these red seeds. And the seeds have an aerial on them, a goo around them. So very easy to identify. Maybe not from the foliage, but from the flowers and from the gourds themselves. And I always think that those little orange gourds, they remind me of Halloween. Very lightweight. Okay, it is invasive. Very invasive. So if you don't have a large area that you can let it just grow in, you can control it to some extent. But it is invasive. And in some places it's considered noxious. So you might want to check your municipality's ruling on this. Nice. Great for the wildlife. And that's why I grow it. Now, it does have medicinal properties. In fact, it's called pharmacy on a fence. It does have edible properties. But you really need to do some research and know what you're doing if you want to eat from the wild version. Because there are parts of the plant at different times that are extremely toxic, and it can make humans and animals sick. So we have to do some research. I have no intentions of eating from this plant. I have no intentions of using any portion of this plant for medicinal properties. But I'd like to know what they are in case I ever need to. And in the scientific community, they are doing some serious research on the medicinal properties of this plant. So, invasive, noxious, fast-growing, only stinks when you crush the leaves, produces copious amounts of beautiful yellow flowers, produces copious amounts of these warty, rigid gourds. That's basic it. Growing conditions, practically anywhere. It does like sun, it will grow in partial shade. Now, we haven't had any rain for a little while, so this isn't looking the best. If we had consistent rain for a little while, this would all green up, flush out, and probably grow twice as big as it is now. I love it for the pollinators, and there's just bees all over it. Okay, maintenance, that is up to you. If you've got a place so you can let it grow wild, let it grow wild. You have a smaller area, and you just want to grow some to have for the wildlife, for the pollinators. You can control it by trimming it back a couple of times a year. If you don't want it to set seeds, deadhead it when the flowers die. And then it won't make your melons or your gourds or your whatever you want to call them, and it won't set seeds. The vine itself is still going to grow because it is quite tenacious. It is lightweight again. It's not going to break your tree down or your fence down. So, great for the wildlife, great for the pollinators, a beautiful ornamental. Medicinal purposes, edible purposes. I think it's a great plant. And yes, some folks do consider it a weed, but what is a weed? It's a plant that is growing somewhere when you don't want it to, or it's a plant that you don't like some of the characteristics of. Stinkweed. I think I'll call it balsam apple. That sounds much better than stinkweed, doesn't it? Do some research, folks, and welcome this to your garden if you can. Till we speak again, have a fantastic day.